Hello everyone. Yesterday we watched The Climb. So Aiden, what's the plot of The Climb?
The Climb is the story of two men and their friendship. There's Mike, who's the asshole loser one, and there's Kyle, who's the one who's doing a little better for himself. He's nice to everyone.
But he's a pushover.
He's a pushover. Throughout the many years that we see their friendship in the movie, they have their ups, they have their downs. Even when they fight and don't talk for many years, they always end up coming back together. It's a slice of life movie, so there's not really a whole lot of actual plot beats.
Yeah.
So Connor, what'd you think of The Climb?
I liked The Climb quite a bit. I thought it was probably one of the better movies that came out this year. Although technically it's 2019, which begs the question on our end of the year list, should we put this on there? If we do, we should probably put 1917 on there too, because we watched that this year.
I mean,
grandfather some over, you know?
It's 2020 wide release.
Okay, fair enough. But so was, well, I guess fucking 1917 was like December 29th wide release. Yeah. December 30th. It came out a week after Star Wars.
Although if it wasn't on our last list, we can just throw 1917 on this one.
I don't think it was, but whatever, we'll figure that out later. Doesn't matter. The shot and cinematography was very impressive. There was a lot of long takes, particularly the third segment, I believe, which was the Christmas segment. This movie's like segmented, so each segment is like a little story that takes place at a certain time within their friendship. The start of this movie is kind of their initial falling out after Mike starts dating Kyle's wife or fiance. And basically there's a Christmas party. That's the third segment. They did a really impressive one-shot take. A lot of this movie felt like kind of a play, because even the scene before this was the Thanksgiving party, and it kind of scans over and then it goes from fall to winter, and then it scans back, and then it scans back. It's this really impressive one take looking thing. I think there were some cuts you could kind of see. There's a couple points where it kind of seemed like, okay, that was obvious
there's
computer
some artificial cuts,
but I mean, as far as it goes, it was still very impressive looking, and just choreographing going around that house and kind of seeing in every room. That was really impressive shot choreographing, kind of being able to see this entire party go down essentially in real time with all the different conversations. People are talking about Mike, people are talking about other stuff, and it's a pretty impressive way to shoot. These characters, at points you're thinking why would they do such a thing? Why would Kyle still be friends with Mike? But at the same time, based on how the relationship is and how Kyle is and how Mike are, it kind of makes sense that they're still friends in a way. You could see real people in the same situation and be yeah, if they were like that in real life and this was the situation, I could see how it would end up that way. So the friendship felt really natural. The characterizations felt very natural. Obviously, I think this movie had a lot of European dry comedy type humor to it. A lot of the comedy in there was super dry. There weren't a lot of points I laughed out loud. There were quite a few, but there was a lot of stuff I found amusing, and the jokes were mostly well done. The Batman voice joke they did in the middle was a bit cliched, but considering that it's been years since I've seen one of those, I didn't mind it too much, although it did seem like a gag that belonged in this art house comedy about as much as it belonged in Meet the Spartans. I don't know if Meet the Spartans did it, but that type of fucking parody movie also did the Batman voice. But for the most part, the humor was pretty well put together. The characters were all likable in a sense. None of them are incredibly likable characters. Of the main cast, Mike, Kyle, and Mike's fiance, I can't remember her name. They all have their flaws. Yeah, Marissa. They all have their flaws, but for the most part, they're interesting characters at the very least, if not not necessarily characters that are likable in the sense that I would necessarily hang around them, but they are interesting. They are well fleshed out. It's one of the most real feeling movies in terms of characterization and as a character study that I've seen in a while. So it's pretty thought provoking stuff. It's a fun time. So Aiden, what did you think of The Climb?
I like the climb because it's really, it feels kind of naturalistic. Connor talked about the long takes. Each chapter, not necessarily all the way through, but most of the chapters kind of try to have artificial long takes, make everything flow smoothly into each other.
Even with even the
and some
chapters
of them are
that
natural
do
long takes,
cut,
but
even the chapters that do cut feel very natural, and there's still a lot of talent. It's not like there's cuts every 5 seconds to show action. It's very it still takes a lot of talent, and the acting's incredible in this movie.
So yeah, it has an incredibly good naturalistic kind of flow to it, and that's not just in the way that the camera, the cinematography is framed, but also, I guess, in the storytelling. Like, there's nothing. It's very grounded. There's nothing really dramatic that happens in it, like, as far as it goes. There's like, Kyle falls through the ice, but he's fine.
There's the point where Mike crashes their wedding.
Mike crashes their wedding and then gets punched in the face once, and then they get married anyway.
Right, this movie does kind of play with tropes like that, where you think like Mike's gonna come in, make the dramatic speech, and then their wedding won't happen, but then they're kind of just like, no, we're gonna keep on with the wedding, and then the priest's like, probably a bad idea to get married, and then it cuts right to them getting a divorce. Like,
well, I mean,
they feel like
a little bit of stuff where they're married first, but
they have the one scene or the one part where they're married, but it is interesting to see like. They do kind of, it's not like a happily ever after, and it's not like playing Marissa out to be a villain. Like, it actually feels kind of natural, where you see both of their point of views, and you can see how it probably wouldn't work out, but...
There's a lot of story is also really naturalistic. It really doesn't even have an ending.
No, not particularly.
Like, effectively the movie just picks a point to stop, but that's all it is. Like, there's no like a concrete ending. They continue being friends, and they might at some point stop being friends again, and and then after that they'll become friends again. Like, it's just something that goes on for the rest of their lives in a strangely naturalistic way.
Well, the moral of the story is spelled out pretty strongly at the end, with the son taking off his training wheels, and he's like, when you fall off your bike, you gotta get back on it, and it's kind of like, it does kind of leave it open-ended, like, yeah, most likely they'll have another falling out and become friends again, but that's just how these people are, I suppose. It's a very dysfunctional relationship that's spelled out, and you understand why both parties want to be in the friendship still, but at the same time, like...
Well, I liked it for not really... Like, a lot of these slice-of-life movies end up being, like, weirdly preachy.
Right.
Well, not even that, but, like, they're weirdly preachy and pretentious, where some guy wants to tell some story about the nature of people, like Jonah Hill's 8th grade, where he's like, the 90s are really rad and kids are cool and innocence lost and all that shit. And this movie...
Fucking Curtis always digs into
this movie really doesn't have like a message or a point. It's kind of just like a little viewing of how two people's lives are connected of their lives.
It kind of gave me Napoleon Dynamite vibes in terms of the dry humor. It's not, like, the story is very different than Napoleon Dynamite, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it kind of does have...
But it does have, like, that dry, like, somewhat comedy, somewhat... there's kind of a moral to it, but it's not, like, a preachy, like...
It's a fair bit less goofy than Napoleon Dynamite, but definitely does have the same kind of aimlessness to it that Napoleon Dynamite does. So in that sense, yeah.
I also think like the soundtrack added a lot to that, because we have a lot of like, I don't know, like the music it's not like they were playing like the pop hits, like Fortunate Son and shit. It was very calculated music choices, and they're not like, here's hot pop song from 1978 that we were able to get on the cheap.
Yeah, it's just like some random crap that
Yeah.
someone probably actually listened to at some point. The people who wrote it, I assume.
Presumably.
Who also the guys who wrote this and one of them directed it were the two leads in the movie.
Which isn't surprising because it's a fairly low budget, like Sundance
that happens.
picture.
These.
So
And
it
I would
makes
assume
sense.
they co-directed it, but there's some weird thing where you can't list two directors
I'm sure.
on certain things for whatever reason. Some sort of like union thing with the, I don't know.
Who knows?
Doesn't matter. But yeah, I really appreciate the kind of naturalism that it has. It's not like preachy. It's not overly dramatic. Like there's no melodrama or murder or stabbing or big yelling. It's kind of just like a really quiet, simple movie. So I really like it for that.
Yeah, even when the friends fight, it's not like they're like screaming. No, actually, speaking of like who, like I feel like this was a very cooperative project between the guy who played Mike, the guy who played Kyle, and clearly like the cinematographer had to have done a lot to this movie because this is a very visual film, especially considering the presumably fairly low budget. It's impressive what they ended up doing, and all the actors felt very talented. When they play these roles and they feel very realistic, it doesn't feel like the actors are acting, which is pretty good. If someone can actually play a role and make it feel like this is a real person. Probably the most like cartoony and movie like was Mike, but at the same time there are people like that out there,
Yeah,
so it's not that surprising.
Mike's not that far off from a real person. There's plenty of people who are
Yeah.
stupid jackasses.
I did like that it also felt very real, like how the story played out. Like, yeah, life doesn't really always go out as planned. Weird shit happens, but it never to me feels like there's never a part where like Mike drinks a lot. There's not like a part where Mike is fucking like dying. People like gained weight and lost weight between segments, so this must have been shot over a couple of years.
Yeah,
Very
at least like 2 or 3 years probably.
probably. It's impressively done film.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's comfy. Connor, would you recommend The Climb?
I would definitely recommend it. I know some of our viewers are more blockbuster action movie type, which is cool. If that's the case and you're more in it for entertainment value, like in terms of, like this is a thought-provoking movie. I won't call it boring. I really thought it was an interesting film. It's not like me trying to be artistic, being like, wow, I really liked that, but really it's a piece of shit like the people who liked like Birdman did. But no, this is a genuinely pretty funny film. It's not like a slapstick comedy, so I know a lot of people would find it boring. But if you're into, I would recommend it. I'd give it a shot if you're interested in. If you're very like spectacle, want to see cool shit in film, this isn't the film for you. But if you're interested in like a cool, interesting character study, I think you will get something out of it. So Aiden, would you recommend The Climb?
Yeah, The Climb's really well made. That's all I have to say. You should check it out.